5 of the squad are from our region. We'll hear more about how they're inspiring the next generation. Also tonight, the deadline is looming for any rescue attempts of workshop-based Wilco. It's thought several companies are interested in buying the troubled retailer. Organisers of Leeds Festival insist safety at the event has improved as they give evidence at an inquest into the death of a teenager.
Do not adjust your sets. We've got loads of famous faces coming up on Look North tonight. Gary Lineker, David Attenborough and even Doctor Who's going to be stopping by. Find out why later in the programme.
Well, we've had mixed fortunes today. Sunshine, areas of cloud, even a funnel cloud reported in Ilkley. But what about Thursday, Friday and that all-important weekend? Join me to find out.
Good evening. Could football really be coming home? England has reached the World Cup final in Australia with the help of some Lionesses from our region, seeing them beat the hosts 3-1. There are 5 players from Yorkshire and North Derbyshire in the squad, with Millie Bright and Rachel Daly making the team today. Our reporter Abby Jayola was watching the match at an elite football academy in Doncaster.
The result everyone wanted. Watching the Lionesses roar to victory in the World Cup semi-final has only increased these young players' passion for the game.
When I go on the pitch to play, I want to be them and I aspire to be one of their players.
I want to get on the pitch with them, to be honest, if I could. It makes me want to play football even more.
Just inspirational, and obviously Millie Bright and Mary Oates have both played for Donny Bells, so it's just inspirational.
It's like when you're older, you'll be one of those when you grow up if you want to be a footballer.
Like knowing that they once had the dream when they were younger and like they've achieved theirs so I can achieve mine.
Today's summer training camp at Elite Football Academy was paused for the big match. They only started their girls' sessions here a year ago when they had 2 players, and now there's over 200, and they think that's because of England's Euro and now World Cup success.
Got a lot of the older girls here today, so 14, 15, 16-year-olds that would usually be doing other things are here playing football in their holidays, which I think the World Cup has made a big difference on.
They want to be like every single player. They want to be little Russos, little Hemps, little Millie Brights. They just realise now that that's a dream and that they can do it like they have.
Across Yorkshire, crowds cheered on England, giving their support to the homegrown talent.
Proud knowing that some of them are from Yorkshire, some of them are from Leeds, and I hope we just keep going with it.
So it's the guys now, so it's nice to see the girls in. Come on England, just get the men to catch up now, eh?
Captain Millie Bright is focused on this weekend's final.
To be saying that we're going to the final is crazy, overwhelming, so many different emotions. Just so happy that we could give the fans the dream that they wanted back home, the fans that were here as well, that were off to the final. But yeah, to be leading them out will be absolutely incredible.
But can England really bring it home? Let's ask our local experts.
I'm really, really happy with the result. I'm really happy for the girls and I'm so proud of what they've gone through, and I think they can 100% win it. It's against Spain and, well, we have to try our best.
Yes, I think they can, 100%. It's been brilliant watching them throughout the whole journey.
I think with the depth of the squad we've got, we can do anything, like winning World Cup.
There's no shortage of confidence here, and who knows, maybe one of these girls will one day be a World Cup winner too. Abby Jayola, BBC Look North, Doncaster.
So exciting. Well, Gillian Coulthard, MBE, was the first female England footballer to reach 100 caps. She also played for Doncaster Bells. I spoke to her earlier and began by asking for her thoughts on what the Lionesses have achieved today.
Lost for words, really, to be honest. You know, to be the first England women's team to get to a World Cup final, that's a main, you know, it's a massive, massive thing. Absolutely overwhelmed. Lost for words.
Many fans will be feeling the same. And actually, there's been considerable input, hasn't there, from our region, including Captain Millie Bright, who's from Chesterfield and played for Doncaster Bells.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah. And also we've obviously had Mary Oates and Beth England out there as well. So that's great from a club point of view, from Doncaster. Absolutely fantastic. We haven't seen much of Beth, but obviously Mary and Millie, obviously a bit thick of the things from day one, basically.
Women's football is really booming and has boomed in recent years. What's the life of a top-level England player like now compared to for your generation?
Well, first of all, they won't be doing a day job, you know, like I had to do. I had to go to work 5 days a week, sometimes work overtime. It's moved on massively now since obviously the WSL, and they're all professional. But, you know, we won't be able to do this without obviously the lottery funding as well. You know, 50 million over 10 years, you know, to put into women's football. And we're now reaping rewards through that. You know, we've won the Euros last year, and hopefully we're going to lift the trophy this year at the World Cup.
Next tonight, the deadline for companies to make an offer to buy the homewares chain Wilco ends today. Wilco fell into administration last week with the potential loss of thousands of jobs. The company has been based in Worksop for nearly 30 years. So what do we know? Well, the first store was opened by owners J.K. and Mary Wilkinson in the 1930s. Despite the Second World War, it managed not only to stay open, but actually expand during the 1940s. In 1995, the firm moved its headquarters from Leicester to base itself in Worksop. 13 years ago, a rebrand saw Wilkinson become Wilco, which is how it's known today. Now it's estimated that in Worksop around 1,000 people work at the distribution centre and another 400 at head office, with many more employed in the stores themselves. Nationally, around 12,000 people work for the company. James Vincent is in Worksop for us tonight. James.
Yeah, so that deadline for bidders to say that they want to buy Wilco has ended. It passed at about 5 o'clock this evening. We've not heard anything yet. That's not necessarily bad news. I don't think PricewaterhouseCoopers, the administrators of Wilco, were going to give us a list at 5 minutes past 5 of who was in the mix to buy the company. What will happen over the next couple of days is those bidders will come out of the woodwork. We'll find out who they are and exactly how they might be able to buy Wilco. But this part of the world, Worksop specifically, even though that Wilco is a national business, would lose out the most if the business closed. The administration sale continues at Wilco, but it's not just the stuff on the shelves that's up for grabs now.
Shame for the warehouse workers and the lorry drivers and the suppliers and everything that goes with it.
I've been in today and there's hardly anything left, but it is a lovely place and it's such a shame for Worksop.
In terms of Wilco, when you go in there, it seems to be that there's a bit of everything in there. Is that maybe is that a good thing or is that a problem maybe?
No, it's a good thing because like decorating, garden stuff, beauty, everything that you don't find in other shops, and quite cheaper as well.
I find it a great shame that Wilco's going out of business, and of course it's worse for Worksop than any other part of the country because the head offices are here. I think Wilco employs about 1,000 people at its headquarters.
Those headquarters are on the old Manton Wood colliery site, and of course there have been big job losses there before. Now questions are being asked about the running of Wilco. How do you feel about the way the business has been run?
I'm really angry actually. Wilco's have paid themselves, their shareholders, £77 million worth of bonuses, whilst at the same time they've been recording losses. This hasn't supported the 12,000 workers who work there. And if you look at what's happening in Bassetlaw, we're virtually losing as many jobs as we lost when the pits closed.
I think what you'll find is that somebody will probably come in for the business there, they'll look at the stores, they'll look at the staffing. There's already been a lot of restructuring that's been going on with Wilco. So thankfully, it's not a surprise that's happened overnight. People have been preparing for this, and hopefully we'll get some good news soon.
The management company for the Wilkinson family says the family haven't received any dividends since 2017, and dividends have been reinvested. And while Worksop is hoping for the best, it's also preparing for the worst.
People are rightly nervous because when you hear a company going into administration, it causes a lot of concern.
Chris, what sort of proposition would Wilco be to potential investors?
We'll have to wait and see. Hopefully we'll get buyers come in. Hopefully the stores are an attractive proposition. Hopefully the distribution elements of Wilco are attractive as well. That's going to be really important, particularly for Worksop in the surrounding area.
The Citizens Advice Bureau in Worksop has seen the need for their service more than double in the last year. With the cost of living crisis and maybe more redundancies to come, they're expecting more phone calls.
There's loads of other organisations within Bassett Law that are all working together behind the scenes for if that happens, which we hope that it doesn't happen. But it would be a massive impact on Bassett Law if it does happen. People, if they do lose their jobs, worst case scenario, they can come to us, we can help them. People are already really struggling because of the cost of living crisis.
Wilco is in its 94th year of trading. Staff and customers are hoping it'll not be closing for the last time. Understandably, the staff that work in the city centre branch of Wilco didn't want to speak to us today. That shop's shut for the night now, and workers will turn up there like they did this morning, as normal, but still unsure of their future, and they'll not find that out for a good few weeks.
Thank you, James. Catherine Shuttleworth is a retail expert with Savvy Marketing. Earlier, I asked her how likely she thought a buyout would be.
I think some kind of deal is likely. Whether that will be for the whole business remains to be seen, because one of the problems is that Wilco's run into difficulties because the whole business is not operating as profitably as it should and could be doing. But what there are a number of competitors in the space who'll be thinking there are parts of Wilco that we might be interested in, and I think over the next few days that will become clearer.
Even the Prime Minister has said he's saddened by the demise of Wilco. What went wrong for Wilco?
Yeah, well, we're all sad that Wilco's leaving the high street, but unfortunately what keeps businesses like Wilco going and keeps them profitable is big numbers of us visiting those stores every week and then spending money there. And what's happened to Wilco's is they've run out of money because less of us are visiting every week. The stores are in a lot of high streets. Many of us have started shopping out of town, especially since COVID. And when we get to those Wilco stores, we're not spending as much of our money there. We're spending it with competitors. And there are a lot of really good competitors that sell some or all of the products that Wilco sell. And that makes a massive difference to a business. And also, these businesses work on very small margins. They don't make a lot of money on what they sell, so they have to sell a lot of products to make money. And so when you start selling less and your volume goes down, you get into the kind of tricky situation that Wilco's have found themselves in.
And it is, of course, a major blow for areas like Worksop to lose an employer of Wilco's stature.
Yeah.
Thousands of jobs are at risk across the country.
Yeah, there's about 12,500 jobs at risk. A lot of them in our region because they've got the head office here. They've also got a huge distribution centre and then, of course, stores across Nottinghamshire and lots of stores in Yorkshire. And the problem is that when retailers like this get into difficulties, people who work in those stores, many of whom in Wilco's case have been loyal for a lot of years, can't find jobs that are exactly the same in the places that they live that they can get to easily. And so there are a lot of very worried people at the moment concerned about their future.
It's high season in Scarborough, a place famous for offering a good time, but it also harbours deep pockets of poverty that leave some locals with terrible quality of life. 85% of North Yorkshire's poorest households live in the seaside town, and they have a shorter, less healthy lifespan, as Richard Moss reports.
People come to Scarborough for its spectacular setting and seaside fun, but move away from the attractions and there's a darker side. It's a side that Wayne knows only too well. After losing his home here, he found himself sleeping rough. For 16 months, he lived in a tent.
Being in your tent's like being in a prison cell, I suppose. You can put it like that. You're locked there. And the only time you're allowed out is when you push that door open and think, what am I going to do today? That is a case with homeless people. It's not a case of, I've got food for today. It's where am I going to get my food from for today?
Sean has also struggled. He arrived in the town looking for a better life, but ended up on the streets and on an emotional roller coaster.
Because sometimes you might go somewhere, right, yeah, and they might give you a little bit of hope, like housing or all like that, and then they might say, oh, come back in 2 days. And you go back and say, oh, we haven't got no for you. So for 2 days you'll be going, yes, there might be a possibility, and then when you get there, it's like, do you know what I mean? You're back to square one.
Both men are now rebuilding their lives thanks to help from this centre. But it's also struggling as demands on its services rocket, particularly now from working people.
We have the lowest wages in the whole of North Yorkshire. We also are the 8th in the country for rates of suicide. deaths, and also the third in the country for deaths through drug abuse. So it is a very pretty town, but it's not as pretty when you scratch beneath the surface.
So could the next generation's only answer be to get on their bikes and leave? Well, one visitor to this community centre believes there is hope, but only through an end to what she calls 13 years of broken Conservative promises.
The second tranche of the Towns Fund went to Rishi Sunak's constituency in Richmond in North Yorkshire instead of coming here to Scarborough. I mean, I'm talking to families, they're doing so many jobs, they can't work any harder, so we need to deliver investment here.
Tories, though, insist progress has been made and more will come through a devolution deal from the government that'll bring a county-wide elected mayor.
We've got £4 million for skills, £6 million for employment land, £37 million for the Scarborough and Whitby town deals, but the key thing, the transformative thing, is this £540 million devolution opportunity.
Scarborough's given generations of visitors happy memories. It could be a great place to live, but like so many coastal towns, growing numbers are struggling to keep their heads above water. Richard Moss, BBC Look North, in Scarborough.
Maternity services at Leeds Teaching Hospitals NHS Trust have been rated good by the Care Quality Commission at their latest inspection. Both the Leeds General Infirmary and St James's Hospital were inspected. A CQC spokesperson said staff had the skills, training and abilities to run services well. But further improvements are recommended for the triage phone service, as leaders didn't know how long people were waiting or how many had ended calls which could put them and their babies at risk. For the first time, maternity services were rated as a standalone service rather than alongside gynaecology. The organisers of Leeds Festival say they have made safety improvements ahead of next weekend's event after the death of a 16-year-old last year. David Cellino died in hospital after taking ecstasy at the event in Bramham Park. An inquest into his death heard today from festival bosses. Chloe Lavasuch was at the hearing.
It's the second day of an inquest into the death of 16-year-old David Cellino, who died after taking ecstasy at Leeds Festival last year. Yesterday we heard from David's father, Gianpiero Cellino, who said he had concerns about the safety of under-18s at the event. Well, today here at Wakefield Coroner's Court we heard evidence from Melvin Benn. He's the Managing Director of Festival Republic, which runs Leeds Festival. He said that listening to Mr Cellino's evidence had struck home about the risk of drugs, and he felt genuine sorrow at David's death. But he says he does not think that all 16 and 17-year-olds who attend the festival should have to be accompanied by an adult. Mr Benn said changes have been made ahead of this year's festival, which takes place next weekend. These include new support hubs that will be placed throughout the festival. There's also going to be a new team which, as he said, would weed out drug dealers. And there's also going to be drug search dogs at every entrance. David's family, who've been in court every day, will be back here tomorrow for the final day of the inquest, when coroner Kevin McLaughlin is expected to reach his verdict.
Now, he's been photographing what he describes as queer Leeds for over 3 decades, and now Stuart Lyndon Rhodes has an exhibition of his work on New Briggate in the city centre as part of Pride Month. The exhibition documents nightlife scenes of the 1990s, and Stuart is with me now. Stuart, the exhibition is in several locations and also online. What story are you telling with the pictures?
So the photographs are all from Leeds, all taken throughout from the sort of 1991 right the way through to 97, I think is the latest, in the bars and the clubs, and it shows how, as I like to say in the 1990s, the gay scene came out of the closet. It came out onto the streets away from small back bars, and suddenly we got brewery investment into premises, and we got what I call the super clubs that were holding 1,000 people, such as the Warehouse in Leeds, whereas before it was just always small clubs with 100 people. And so it shows that development.
You've taken literally thousands of images, and I believe they were on film. How did this exhibition come about? How did you select them? So yeah, it was part of my lockdown project, if you like, was to scan these negatives, 35mm negatives that I took 30 years ago. And then I sat down with East Street Arts here in Leeds, approached me about the exhibition, having seen my work, and we sat down together and narrowed down
the balance of photographs that we thought told a story, taking us through that decade. And some of them are black and white, and some of them burst into the colour of what became the nightlife.
And colour is very much what you associate with Pride now. I mean, Leeds Pride, it was a sea of rainbows. How have you seen Pride evolve over the decades you've been photographing?
Well, Pride was a decade ahead of us in London. You know, it was way ahead. And Leeds had a small little efforts over the years. That's grown now to be second only to Manchester in the north. And it's quite interesting because last week I was at Grassington Pride, which was their first Pride, and last year Skipton had their first Pride. So to see Leeds have this massive Pride now.
Thank you very much for talking to us, Stuart.
My pleasure.
Football now. Sheffield United have added a new player to their squad ahead of Friday night's match at Nottingham Forest. Midfielder Tom Davies has joined the Blades on a permanent deal after leaving Everton. He's a former England under-21 international and has played most of his senior career in the Premier League. The club are keeping their cards close to their chest as to when we might see Tom Davies make his Sheffield United debut. As for last night in Leagues 1 and 2, I'm afraid none of our 4 teams in action managed a single win between them. There were defeats for Barnsley and Harrogate Town, but at least Doncaster Rovers grabbed their first point of the season in a 2-2 draw with Mansfield. Bradford City will be kicking themselves. City's Andy Cook missed a penalty, so they had to make do with a 1-1 draw against Stockport. Kettlewell in the Yorkshire Dales has been transformed by the sight of some rather unusual figures. The annual Scarecrow Festival is taking place until Sunday, and this year they're celebrating 100 years of the BBC. So you might spot some familiar faces. Ollie Constable has been taking a look.
They take weeks to perfect. Clothes handmade, the scenes are set, their faces printed out. A scarecrow trail visited by thousands.
A lot of the scarecrows are instantly recognisable, but others need a bit more of your imagination. And with our trail map, let's go see what others we can find.
It can also be a chance to poke fun at other things in life, like this, Jan's red-nosed workman.
He's living a second life. He was originally a clown, hence the nose, but that's become our trademark a little bit now.
What's it like seeing the village come to life? Because people put in so much effort, don't they?
Brilliant. I think it's great seeing people's reactions, and that's the whole point, bring a smile to people's faces, and when they go, ooh, ooh, look at that, you know, we see them across the road as well, looking at other things, and it's brilliant, it's great.
Yeah, I think I'd say that's a spider. So the theme for this year is 100 years of the BBC, which means we've got characters like David Attenborough. Come on, let's go see some more. Oh, which is my camera. Come on, Adam. Shh, it's the Loch Ness Monster. It's Tom Ingle. Well, it's definitely one of his suits. Johnny Bearstraw.
Well, the festival has been going for almost 30 years, and if you move into the village, you have to be ready to roll up your sleeves.
When we moved in, there was a scarecrow that we inherited with the house, so it was kind of rite of passage. I feel there's a shelf in the garage that is just for scarecrows, and you're not allowed to put anything else there.
Ray Rabbit continued to read.
The hare started life as Dickie Bird, which was Catherine's scarecrow last year.
A labour of love and kind of a therapeutic piece of work. So, yes, the chicken wire that's been moulded, and then I kept forgetting that wearing gloves would be a good idea, and then realising that I've scratched myself all over it again.
The colourful event raises money for nearby community groups, with planning for next year's festival already underway. Ollie Constable, BBC Look North, Kettlewell.
Fantastic. I think I spotted Wurzel Gummidge. Let's have the weather now.
Well, I'm thinking a bit of Ken and Barbie going on here, Bridget.
Absolutely right.
Welcome back to Yorkshire. It's been very interesting weather-wise. Look at this. Lucky Max spotted a funnel cloud there in Ilkley. A funnel cloud's a tornado that doesn't quite reach the ground, but it's an indication that there was some instability in the atmosphere today, and it's obviously a very busy time for farmers. This was taken in Wakefield. You can see they're getting in the wheat crop there. You can also see, if you look very carefully, where some of the wheat's been flattened by the rain we had in July. But the good news for farmers is there is a lot of fine weather to come, apart from later Friday and into the early hours of Saturday morning. After that, there is a lot of fine weather to come. There's the addresses on your screen. If you've got some pictures you'd like to send in, and I'll try and get them on the television tomorrow. So the headline for tomorrow is a slow start. I think a grey start. There'll be some low cloud and mist that we've seen along the coast actually today. That will spread inland, and it may well take quite a while to break up, but the afternoon looks better. Friday, a bit of an iffy day. It's cloudy, some showers on that first front. Very wet night Friday night, but once that's out of the way, it looks fairly good. Now, low pressure is way out to the west, so, I mean, ordinarily you'd expect a lot of showers in this setup, but because it's so far out to the west, it looks as though we'll have a lot of fine and warm weather this weekend, and that could last into next week too. There's a satellite picture. The best of the sunshine has been just inland of the coast today, but as I've said, there is some sea fret just offshore, and that is going to pull inland, and it may well develop in situ as well. So by the end of the night, it's grey, a little bit damp, some hill fog in places, and we'll see temperatures coming in at around about 13 or 14 degrees. So tomorrow's high water times in Scarborough at 5:36, Bridlington at just after 6 o'clock. So a slow start tomorrow, grey, misty, some low cloud, mist and fog, and you can see even by 12 o'clock it's still hanging around, but I think through the afternoon it will finally break up. Then a lovely time of it from, say, mid-afternoon everywhere, but it could be earlier in some areas, and where the sun comes out we'll see temperatures coming up at 22 Celsius, that's 72 Fahrenheit. Now, as I say, Friday looks a little bit iffy. It's cloudy, showers later in the day, longer spells of rain, but there's an indication of fine weather apart from the odd shower over the weekend, and that lasts into next week. That's the forecast.
Lovely summer. That's all from us. Corinne will be here with the late news at 10:30. Until then, have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.